Hey guys, so I wanted to talk to you about a decision that I made recently regarding my stepfather. So, this story has a little bit of a backstory to it, and I don't know if I necessarily want to go into details about it, but um, I might just do that. So, I wanted to tell you guys about how I came to the decision to start referring to my stepdad as my dad. Um, from this point forward, I will no longer be calling him my stepdad. I will be referring to him as my dad. And that is with his permission. I have spoken to both him and my mother about it. Um, there are many reasons why I'm choosing to do this, and some of them make me a little bit uncomfortable, some of them make me a little bit depressed, just because of the backstory related to how this came to be. Um, so, my stepdad has been in my life since sixth grade, a little bit longer than that, but he's been my stepdad since the end of my sixth grade year. So, he's been in my life for quite some time. I graduated from high school in 2006. It is now 2020, and so obviously he's been in my life for quite a while now. And I spoke with him about this actually last night via text message, telling him how I feel and asking him if he's okay if I refer to him as my dad. And he said, yes, he's been referring to me as his daughter for over 20 years now. And he said that just know that if I do decide to call him dad, that he is entitled to give me fatherly advice, whether I want to hear it or not, even at the age that I am. And I said I wouldn't expect anything less from him. Um, so I started off having the conversation with my mother, and my mother has been through a whole hell of a lot with me. My birth father was not necessarily in the picture that much. I mean, he bought me gifts and things like that, but he signed over his rights to me so that my mom's husband at the time, which is my younger brother Pierce's dad, could legally adopt me. So my birth father signed over his rights for the longest time up until a couple of years ago, when I went up to, well, a few months after I went up to visit my mom and went to my first powwow. um, I was referring to my brother Pierce's dad as my dad, because, you know, he was legally my dad. I mean, legally he still is, but I will never refer to him as my dad again. And like I said, there is a huge backstory to that. Um, Things were said, and he just really, really hurt my feelings, like badly. And I don't feel like he deserves to be called my dad anymore, and I will never do it again. Um, so he really hurt me, and that's why my stepdad is now my dad, and he is the only father figure in my life. Um, so when my cousin Kelly died in October of 2018, yes, 2018, when she died in October of 2018, uh, I went up to Michigan, the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, where I was raised. I was born and raised up there. And when I went up there for her funeral, Pierce's dad's mother was very sick. And I was texting, um, I was texting Pierce's dad at that time to kind of like let him know that I was up there for Kelly's funeral. And he was giving my mom a lot of hassle because he wasn't notified about the funeral, blah, blah, blah. That's a whole nother story. And so I was sticking up for my mother via text message, and I will always stick up for my mother. Um, and words were said, like, I didn't drive up there. I drove to my mother's house, which is now in the lower peninsula of Michigan. Um, And obviously, she used to live in the Upper Peninsula, but when she retired, she moved to the Lower Peninsula, um, which is where our tribal centers and all that stuff are located. And she actually works for a business that is owned by the tribe. Another story. Um, Pierce's dad said some things and was basically talking shit about my birth dad, which my birth dad died, was it 4 years ago now? He died a few years ago, and he had stomach and esophageal cancer, and so he ended up dying. And it just really, really hurt me that Pierce's dad, after knowing how I felt about my birth dad and knowing like it was still very hard for me, even though we weren't close because it's still my birth dad. And he did begin to get close to me when he started getting sick, but towards the end, the only updates I was getting was from my sister Renee, who actually lived in the same town as my birth dad and was helping to take care of him when he was sicker. And um, I understand that because when you have cancer and you're going through all that stuff, it's hard to kind of try to continue to form a bond with, your child who you haven't really been in their life for a substantial amount of their life. Um, when they live in another state and they're not exactly readily available to you when you've got all these medical treatments and things going on. And so I don't fault him for that. I've forgiven him for everything that he's done to me. And um, when he died, I wish I could have been able to go up there to say goodbye to him, but I couldn't. Um, but to have Pierce's dad talk shit about the man who actually, like, was my biological father, and then say all these things about how I'm not his daughter and I could never be his daughter acting that way. And this is why. Because I was already back in the Lower Peninsula of Michigan, where my mom lives, at her house, because Pierce's dad was mad that I couldn't go visit his mom as we were traveling back from Marquette, Michigan to the Lower Peninsula of Michigan after my cousin's funeral. And I tried to explain to him, listen, I did not drive up here. I rode with my mother, and I can't, like, I have no control over where this vehicle is going, and I can't ask her to sit here for hours in a place where she's got nothing to do. I can't ask her to stop what she's doing when she has to work the next day, and we've just finished, saying goodbye to my cousin, my mother's niece, and I don't even want to repeat the things that he said, but it was just awful. And like, my stepdad, even though he and I had a lot of issues growing up, because he came into my life at a time when I was just becoming a teenager. I was an asshole to him, and like, I always said to him, you will never be my dad, I will never call you dad, you'll never be my father. I threw that up in his face all the time, and he has done so much for me. Regardless of how I treated him, what I said to him, how I acted towards him, he was always there. He always loved me. Still to this day, last night I texted him and I said, I love you, Dad. And it made me want to cry when he said, I love you too. And I'm getting emotional now just thinking about it. Like, as a step parent myself, I could not imagine if Jacob and I had the same type of relationship that I had with my stepdad when I was, a teenager. when I was Jacob's age, I was a complete and utter asshole to my stepdad. And, you know, he didn't deserve it. He was just trying to be there, be supportive, be loving, and still parent. I mean, he lived with us. My mom had custody of myself and my younger brother Pierce. And so we were basically full time, except for every other weekend or whenever we were at Pierce's dad's. We were with my mom and my stepdad. So, in all reality, you know, he is my dad. You know, I would never have to worry about my stepdad telling me that I'm not his daughter because I did something that he doesn't agree with. You know, he has always accepted me wholeheartedly, and I love the way that he treats my mother. You know, my mom has not had it easy since she lost her mom and her dad. You know, she's got health problems as well. And, you know, I'm just so thankful that she has a man by her side that would literally do anything for her. Like, he has gone out of his way to make sure that she has everything that she needs and then some. You know, he treats her so well, and I'm so thankful that he's in her life, my life, and of course Pierce's life. Like I said, we may not have always gotten along, but I am so thankful that he is in my life. And even if something were to happen to my mother today, he would still be in my life. He would still love me unconditionally, like a father should love their daughter. He may question the things that I do. He may question if I'm a little loony. But, you know, he's done so much for me, and I don't think he even realizes half the stuff that he's done for me. I don't know if he realizes all the things that I've learned from him about, you know, being a good step parent. You know, he set a really good example for me, and I think that's why I do my best to get along with Jacob. I don't talk bad about his mother in front of him, or really at all, because I don't have any problems with Jacob's mom. I don't try to replace his mother. Jacob calls me mom on his own. He chooses to do so. And, you know, I couldn't be more thankful for this man who came into my life at a time when, you know, I was going through so much because, you know, middle school sucks. You know, and he just stepped up and he was there, you know, and I couldn't be more thankful for him, you know, just constantly, even after all the shit that I did to him, said to him. You know, I was pretty hateful at some points, and, you know, regardless, he was still there for me with no judgment, just love. And, you know, it is just my hope that, you know, everybody has that type of love in their life at some point or another, because everybody deserves that, you know. And whew, I'm sorry that I got so emotional about this, but I love him very much, and he will always be my dad. I will no longer, past this video, refer to him as my stepdad. He is my dad. And if he ever watches this, I love you. Thank you so much for being there for me. No, this isn't real. You know. Anyways, thank you for listening. Sorry for being so emotional and crying. You know, it's what I'm good at, okay? But anyways, I hope you guys are having a good day. If there's any topics you'd like me to talk about, feel free to let me know, and I'll do my best to get something filmed for you. And I will talk to you guys again in my next video.